Welcome, everyone. A quick thank you to our audience for spending the last few hours with us. Very pleased to introduce our final speakers for day one. Both are with Global Custom Commerce, a Home Depot company. It's my honor to introduce Marcia Perchia, the VP of Accountability, and Corinne Duarte, the Director of Performance Improvement. Their presentation is entitled, Who Owns Development? The Home Depot's Global Custom Commerce Strategy to Creating a Learning Culture. Again, welcome, Marcia and Corinne. The floor is yours.
Hi, Mason. Thanks for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So my name is Marcia Porche, and as Mason mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Home Depot's Global Custom Commerce.
And I am Corinne Duarte, and I handle performance improvement here at Global Custom Commerce.
We're going to spend, I would say, the next 20 minutes or so talking to you about how to build a learning culture. But before going into that, we wanted to just spend a few minutes talking about our company, and I think it would help you to have perspective on why we've taken the approach we did. So our company was founded in 1986 by Jay Steinfeld and his wife, and our core product offering at that time was draperies. And Jay is a very passionate entrepreneur leader and propelled our business into the blind space back in 2001. And if you fast forward from them, in 2014, we were acquired by the Home Depot, which was pretty fascinating for us. And the key reasons behind that acquisition were a couple of things. One, the Home Depot was impressed with our company culture. Two, we have very rich product expertise. And three, we also have great process and structure around our content engagement center, and that's one of the reasons that they wanted to focus on the acquisition. But an interesting thing about Jay is he's not only passionate about the business, he's also passionate about core values. Jay still comes to work every day, which is a pleasure to see him. But one of the things that we enjoy about Jay, and he aspires all of his associates, is he believes that it's his job and the purpose of our company to make everyone better than they believe possible. So that kind of sets the stage for learning and continuous improvement, which we'll now get into kind of our focus on that.
So we are very excited today to share with you some of the strategies that we've implemented to have a learning culture here in our organization. So a little bit of what we'll talk about today will provide you with some insight that we've gained on some research that we've done. We'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we faced and a basic execution that we've done with a framework. And then we'll highlight some of our recent accomplishments. We definitely want this to be an interactive session, so please feel free as we're going through to ask questions along the way, and we'll try to address those as we go. But we wanted to get started with a poll question. So to what extent would you describe your organization's culture as a culture of learning? So we'll give you just a few moments to go ahead and answer that poll question.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for taking time to respond to the poll. And it's interesting. We have a mixed bag of results. We have a small portion of you who feel that you have, to a high extent, a learning culture, some in the category of moderate, and then we have some in small, and then we have a few others and not at all. And, you know, that's not surprising to us, which will lead us into our next conversation. So prior to building our learning culture and embarking on this journey, we've done a lot of research, and there are a lot of different schools of thought. But interesting survey that we read was back in 2017 that was issued by Kevin Martin. He's a Chief Research Officer with I4CP. He published that only 31% of organizations have extensive learning cultures. And that's interesting because 835 learning professionals were polled. And then you may ask yourself, why is that? And one of the things that Kevin shared in his research is that unless you have a culture that supports your learning strategy, it's not going to execute. And in fact, it will actually implode. And he thinks that in order to even embark on this journey, you need to make sure that one, you have leadership from the top, but two, it's embedded in the culture of your company's DNA.
So we wanted to start, before we got into some of our challenges and some of the strategies that we've used, we wanted to start by really defining what is a learning culture. So I'm going to take a moment and read this, but then I'll dive in a little bit to some key things here. So a culture of learning or learning culture is one in which employees continuously seek, share, and apply new knowledge and skills to improve individual and organizational performance. The importance of the pursuit and application of learning is expressed in organizational values and permeates all aspects of organizational life. And that's kind of a lot of words, but I'm going to dive in to some key words and phrases that really stood out to me that helps make this definition so powerful. The first is seek, share, and apply. You know, if you have a learning culture within your organization, then the people will continuously seek knowledge. If someone doesn't know the answer, they find out. They seek it out. They don't wait for somebody else to teach them. They don't use the excuse that they didn't know because they weren't trained. If they have to find something out, they do the work, they do the research, and they find the knowledge. And then they openly share that with others. Learning is very social. So they share that knowledge with other people, and then they show that they can apply that in their job. Another key word here is the organizational values. So Marcia just shared that it's so important that we have organizational values that promote a learning culture. And we're very fortunate to be a part of a company that has that. You know, we have core values like improve continuously and experiment without fear of failure. So we're very fortunate to have those values already in place. That being said, though, we still have struggles in trying to pursue a learning culture, and we'll talk a little bit about those. But the last part of this that really stood out to me, and I actually think it's the most powerful part of this whole definition, is permeates all aspects of organizational life. You know, a lot of people think that learning is a formal event. You know, it's a course that they took. It's a book that they read. It's an e-learning that they did. But we all know that learning is not just a formal event. It's something that is an ongoing process. And when learning permeates all aspects of organizational life, it means it's in the day-to-day. It's on the project that you're working in. It's in conversations that you have. It's in relationships that you build with others. Every interaction is a learning opportunity.
So as Corinne mentioned, you know, we have had some challenges along the way. And, you know, we weren't surprised by that because when you think about driving change in a culture, it takes time, it takes patience, and it will definitely come with some roadblocks. And we wanted to share some of those with you. The first challenge that we had is trying to fulfill the demands of meeting financial results. I'm sure everyone on the call has the same pressures that we have. You're expected to meet the financial results first. Well, if you're like us, that comes with a lot of pressure because sometimes that requires you to embark on a journey for looking for talent and upgrade skills in areas that you hadn't planned to, or bringing on new leaders. That then drives another challenge because you have to constantly look at your organization structure. You have to think about talent and acquisition strategies. That then leads into the challenge of career development, because then you can't just focus on your providing career pathing for individuals within a specific role or job family. You also have to create structure around how to help associates move from one role to the next, and that's even outside their immediate department. So if you add that to the learning challenges the challenges that we've had in learning and development, it becomes really complicated. From a learning and development side, you know, we had all of our business owners coming to us with almost every training request that they could imagine. And that was hard because we find ourselves trying to resolve strategic issues at the same time as operational issues. The other challenge that we had is limited resources. We have a very small team, and as I mentioned, we cannot juggle strategic and operational issues at the same time. So we really had to take a step back and think about how to prioritize work, but also create boundaries. And then the last challenge that we had, and this was an interesting one for us, we found that there was limited content available. And what I mean by that is in some cases, content hadn't been updated in a year and a half or longer. In other cases, the content didn't exist. And so if you think about this combined the learning and development challenges with the business challenges, it was just very hard. So we really needed to have a focus on what was going to be our strategy to get us out of this and really penetrate building a solid learning culture.
So Marcia just shared some of our organizational and our implementation challenges, one of which is around ownership of development. So before we get into some of our strategy, we thought it would be interesting to get your perspective on that, which leads us to our next poll question. So who do you feel owns career development for associates? So just take a few moments and answer that question.
Almost done. So thanks for responding to that poll. So we're not going to reveal the results of that immediately. We're going to talk about that towards the latter part of the presentation because we do have a perspective on that. But thank you for responding. So now I'm going to talk about the building blocks of establishing a learning culture. And I'm pretty excited about talking about this because both Corinne and I are very passionate about learning and development. We have a small team that's passionate about learning and development, and so we're really taking penetrating our culture very seriously. So under the leader side, we were fortunate about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, to hire a chief people strategy officer. And that was a key role for us because that role actually spends time trying to connect the company strategy, our core values, and talent management and talent development with a dedicated focus. The other thing that we did was we had 2 leaders focused on the academic side of learning and on the administration side of learning. And that was important because we recognize learning isn't just about the academic side, but there's a lot of administration that goes around launching programs, and so we wanted to make sure we had focus there. And last under leadership is we obtained our buy-in from our C-suite from the very top and at the very beginning. Prior to kicking off any major initiatives, we had an official kickoff with our C-suite and talked about the scope, strategy, objectives for our institute, but we also laid out what we expected of them, and that set clear expectations up front, and we worked through any questions and challenges that they had, which helped us to get to alignment on a buy-in and strategy. On the people side, we established a corporate university that we call ILLIAD, and ILLIAD stands for the Institute of Leadership, Innovation, Advancement, and Development. And for us, our corporate university, we wanted to make sure that we added value to the company. So one of the things that we do or did out of the gate is we prioritized our strategy and our deliverables and our roadmap and our capital funding along with the other departments in our company. So it was very clear in terms of what we were going to execute, how it connected to the strategy, what funds we required the company to provide us with. So we were being viewed as just as impactful as everyone else. And so far that has worked for us. We also built a team, a small team of professionals dedicated to learning and development. And then finally, we solicit ambassadors and champions of our work all the time. We have found that we could say, I call it shouting to the mountaintops as much as we like about, the great things that we're doing, about the value that we think that we bring, but we have found it to be super impactful to have associates and leaders to act as our ambassadors. And we have them do that by providing testimonials. They sometimes speak on our behalf at our company events. We post quotes on our monitors around the office. We have contests and give them T-shirts. We do a lot of different things, but we find that connectedness with the associates and leaders outside of our learning and development group has proven to be very successful for us.
So as far as behaviors, one of the things that we have focused on, and it's been a continuous focus, is shifting a large portion of ownership to the associate and the leader. And basically the truth is it's not learning and development's role to own every single piece of learning and development in the organization. And when you think about it, it's really just not even feasible. We have a team of about 7 people in our learning and development, and for them to really own every single piece of learning and development for almost 400 people just isn't feasible. And we know that learning and development is an ongoing process. It happens on the job. It happens in the moment. And the person who knows what they need probably more than anybody is the associate themselves. So they have to take ownership of that. And their leader has to partner with them and own development of their team in order for their team to be successful. One of the things that we've done here to help with that is that we've actually certified internal learning facilitators in every department so that they could take ownership in their own operational training. And we're going to go a little bit more in detail into that a little bit later in the presentation as we highlight some of our accomplishments. We've also held leaders accountable to do monthly one-to-ones with their team. And that consists of a one-to-one conversation planner that helps guide that conversation. It's focused, of course, on project goals and performance goals, but there's also opportunity to talk about development goals and how they're demonstrating our core values. And then we also need to ensure that we're giving people the opportunity to develop, and that might be a formal learning, but it may also be time for them to be involved in a special project or a special assignment or maybe lead a team meeting. So we've got to give people the opportunity and the time to do some of those stretch assignments in order to develop as well. And then for resources, we've deployed some different development tools like the one-to-one planner and also a development plan, which is called our development blueprint. And we've also launched some learning platforms like LinkedIn Learning, and we're also doing a pilot right now with the Degreed platform. And then we've done some different forms of social learning, one of which is 2 summits that we hold throughout the year, and I'm going to share a little bit more on those in just a moment. And then we also did a pilot this year for something that we call Development Days. And that's where we actually allowed our associates to present to the company on how they've developed themselves and some tips and tricks that they've done to fit development into their days and into their time period. So it's that social learning aspect where it's not learning and development that's sharing the knowledge, but it's actually people within the organization. So we would like to share a little bit more on some of our key accomplishments this year, but I'm going to take a moment and just pause and see if anybody has any questions on what we've shared thus far.
Yeah. And so, Corinne, we do have one question at this point, and the question is, how was the reaction of the associates? Did they actually own their development? I'm going to tackle that question, Corinne, and you can definitely chime in.
Sure.
So I think at this point, the reaction of our associates has been very positive. Just as background, prior to us launching our corporate university, our learning and development focus was mainly on our customer engagement center. So if you were not in the customer engagement center, you had limited opportunities for learning. So the moment that we established this team in the university, we were able to provide tons of learning and tools and resources to the rest of the organization that didn't exist, and that was well received. In terms of the part 2 of the question, did the associates actually own their development? I would say we're getting there. I think a lot of it is new to them and they're understanding what it means, and so it's a bit of a transition and culture shift, but I definitely see a lot of positivity and energy around associates owning their development.
I would agree with that. I think that part of this process is educating the organization on what learning really is. Again, I think there's this perception that learning is typically something formal. It's a class or it's a course. So it's getting people to understand that it's this ongoing process and how they can really take that within their own hands and do it.
Yeah, thanks. And we had time for one more question. There was another question. Is there anything we would have done differently? That's an interesting question. And again, I'll tackle that and let Corinne provide perspective. For me, the one thing that I wouldn't say that we should have done differently, it would be more of we should take more time. And I would say educating our leaders, our senior leaders and below. And the reason I say that is everyone has their own perspective of what learning and development is, and they're a little bit married to their opinion. And so we find even still as we embark on new projects or go into discussions that we have to kind of take a step back and re-educate everyone. So I'm not sure that our approach and the pace in which we've moved really stuck in, but I think we're getting there. So I don't know that I'd do it differently. I would just take a little bit more time.
All right, so now we wanted to share a few things that we've done that we've covered a little bit within our building blocks, but we wanted to expand upon some of those things because they've been some key accomplishments for us. One of those, and I mentioned it, is our summits that we have. So we, for the last 2 years, have held 2 development summits for those years. One of them is a leadership development summit, and that usually happens early in the year, like around January, February, and it's for all of our people leaders. It's a full-day event where we encourage our leaders, we motivate them, we cascade down strategy. We'll bring in guest speakers to speak on different organizational topics that tie back to our goals. So that's a really important event where we empower our leaders and we get them motivated to really own development of their team and their associates throughout the year. And then later in the year, we have a people development summit. And this is a half-day event. This is a big deal. We actually shut down the company. So for a half a day, we shut down the building, we shut down the company. We have an off-site event for every single associate in the company. And I'll just say, when you invest time in something like that, when you take people away from their job for a half day and you invest in the development of your people, it goes a long way to show what's a priority in your company. And so some previous topics that we've had in those have been things like building your brand or mindfulness, strategy and culture, design thinking. So again, a great opportunity for them to hear from thought leaders outside of our company that they don't normally get to hear from. But it's also a great opportunity to invest in that social learning, right? So they're sitting with peers, they're sitting with people that they don't see on an everyday basis. They're learning things that they didn't know from their peers. And it's been a really great event that we've had here at the organization.
Another accomplishment that we'd like to talk about is the launching of our No-Brainer Learning Facilitators program. And for us, this was really exciting because it was one of the first things that we actually launched when we stood up the corporate university. And the focus of this program is to use our internal capacity to build out more, I would say, capacity focused on learning development, but also have ambassadors in the company. I mentioned early on that we had struggles with limited resources within our organization, and then we also realized that if we really wanted to make an impact in the culture, we needed to develop bench strength. And so with the launch of this program, it allowed us to do that. But the cool thing about this program is we had everyone from our CEO to our CFO to the next level leaders down, and even down to the supervisors and associates to apply for this program. And it was a really big deal. We actually had them to complete an application, an official application, to be screened and then to go through a process of being evaluated before we accepted them. And so we had over 65 applicants, and we accepted 43 into the program. And that was a big deal for us. And so one of the things that I wanted to share about the program is they learned concepts of neuroscience and learning. They learned how to use music and art to make learning more impactful. They actually learned how to be more effective in front of a camera and then receive feedback on demand. And so if you think about it, it's really tough to be in a room with like 16 people, not only be videotaped, but then to also watch yourself on camera and then be given feedback. But I will tell you what's been so cool for us is this program has been super successful. We now see our leaders and associates demonstrating active results from this program into how they facilitate meetings, how they conduct training sessions, and it's been really good for us at this point. And just a little bit about the picture that you see, to reward everyone for their participation, we actually had an official graduation. We had some who participated in the program who just wanted to just graduate and demonstrate their dedication to the program, and then we also had a subset of the participants who wanted to be certified. And so we had a graduation about a month ago, and the this is a picture from that event.
And then the last thing we'd like to share on is LinkedIn Learning. So we did launch this learning platform earlier this year. And what I'm really excited about with this program launch was not necessarily that we launched a learning platform, because that can be pretty common, to launch a learning platform for your organization. It's some of the ways that we went about launching it and how we continue to utilize it to drive that message of the associate owning their development. So the first things that we did really revolved around leaders. Before we kicked it off, we had leaders send us competencies for every role on their team so that we could ensure that we had learning paths that matched up with those competencies. We also held lunch and learns with our leaders before anybody else to run them through the tool so that they had an understanding of it, and actually came up with lists in those lunch and learns on how our leaders could engage their teams with this learning platform. We also gave leaders access to reporting and the ability to recommend courses to their groups. So again, it's not us pushing the message of learning and development, it's leaders engaging their associates with them. And then as far as associates go, we've really let them be the driver in this. We have had no mandatory courses that we've assigned out to the organization. We have really let the associates drive the courses that they want to watch. If we do have an associate that reaches out to us, I'll have an associate that'll come to me, hey, what course should I take next? Or what learning path should I take next? And it's a really easy conversation to say, hey, what are your performance goals and what's on your development blueprint? What are some things that you need to focus on? And then get with your leader and talk about that so that you guys can decide on courses. And then we've also utilized our power users to speak for us. So we recognize them on our communication screen. So the picture that you see in front of you now are some examples of the communication screens that we've done when somebody completes a learning path. So they get a t-shirt that says, I own my development. We take their picture, we put it up on the screen, and we celebrate their initiative and owning their development. We've also had some of our power users speak at our all hands events so that they can tell others in the organization what kind of courses they're taking and how they're fitting in these courses within their day. So it has been tremendous in helping people to get that message of, I own this. I need to take the initiative. And I've actually had leaders reach out to me who have done, watched hours of courses and said, hey, I'd like to put together customized learning paths for my team. And we've helped them to do that. So it's really helped to drive that message.
Thanks. Before going on to the next final slide, I just wanted to answer a question that we had. And the question is about how do we go about launching the No Brainer Learning Facilitators program? So first the question was, did we use an external organization? The answer was no. Our Chief People Strategy Officer that joined our company actually had structure around this program, and we were able to customize the program that he had to fit within our culture and our core values, and we were able to facilitate that program internally. The duration of the program was 8 days in total. So what we did was we had 2 days per month in classroom sessions, and they were sometimes 8 to 10 days. But there were a lot of activities and homework that came with that. So, for example, you would get the content in class, and then you were integrated into teams, and then you were expected to either go research a topic or build a presentation to talk about a concept, and then you were expected to come back in front of your peers of that particular cohort and present what you've done, and then you basically would get evaluated on that. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'll definitely elaborate further. So, we asked the question early on, who owns the development? And it was interesting looking at the responses because some of you said the associate, some of you said leader, and then someone said L&D, but then we also had all of the above. And, from our perspective here at Home Depot's GCC, we think it's a connected experience, but it starts with the associate. The associate needs to be very self-aware that they own their development. They know the most about what they need, where they are in their learning abilities, and they need to then connect with their leader. Their leader will be their partner. They will help them provide the right tools and navigate the organization as they need, and they'll also be an ambassador for their development. This may come in the form of special project assignments or stretch opportunities to make sure the leader is engaged and really helping their associate to achieve the goals that they have. And then also on the learning and development side, our job is to provide expertise. We provide resources and we provide tools to support that, but we should not be the organization that's driving ownership. We expect the associate and their leaders to take on that responsibility. And this is just our line of thinking. And so far, it's really working. It has really helped us to position ourselves from an L&D perspective for not taking ownership of everything that's related to training or skills development or learning and development, and put some of that accountability back into the organization. And so with that, this concludes our presentation. We're so excited to have had the opportunity to talk to you about this topic, our journey here at GCC, and we're open to any other questions that you guys may have.
So
okay,
thank
Mason,
you. Thank you, Marcia and Corinne. Such a great presentation. I will ask a quick question. I know you spoke about using LinkedIn, but what other technologies have you used in the course of your, creating that learning culture, and what seems to be the technologies that learners seem to be responding to?
Yeah, Mason, that's a really good question. And so we started with LinkedIn Learning. I think Corinne may have touched on Degreed. And we're also looking at some other tools. But I'll tell you, it's really not about the platforms. It's about how we're trying to transition our environment from a classroom-based learning environment to more of a blended environment. So we've been doing a lot of work with videos. We're doing a lot of work with trying to build more e-learning modules and things of that nature. So we're not rolling out any more platforms at this point, because I think LinkedIn Learning and Degree provide a lot of tools and resources that we didn't have, but we are making investments in terms of tools in our learning and development side of the house that we need to better do our jobs with building more impactful learning experiences, if that makes sense.
It does, very much so.
And we have one more question, and the question is, what has been our highlight? What have you learned and what have we enjoyed? Corinne, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest highlights for me is just the individuals that will come back around, like especially with a platform like LinkedIn Learning, and say, hey, I just took this course, I just took this learning path, and I was immediately able to get some things to apply into my role here. Thank you so much for providing something like this for us to help develop ourselves. And when that happens, when you have an individual who's really taking ownership of it, but also recognizing the effort that it takes to put into that, it's super rewarding for that. So that's the individual level for me is, because I focus so much on performance improvement, just when an individual is able to apply what we're providing for them, that's one of my highlights.
Yeah, and I would say my highlight personally is just being a part of a team that's passionate about learning, and we're providing a service that's directly connected to our core value, which is improving continuously, but also in support of our company purpose to help people believe that they can become better than they believe possible. And Mason, we have one more question that just came through. We have two questions that came through. So I'll read the first one. First, what has been the biggest challenge and how do we overcome it for a successful implementation? I'm going to think about that. I will say the biggest challenge that we had and the one that we're still going through is just educating the organization on what learning and development is. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I think some people believe that training is just putting a few words on a slide and going into a meeting and talking about it. They really don't understand that you need to take time to think through, adult learning theory, instructional design, what makes sense. And sometimes the requests that they have aren't really even training related, And so for us, it's really educating the organization to really understand what the role is as we continue to build out our roadmap and and help them to understand the expertise that it requires. And it's not something that's done in 2 to 3 hours. I kind of described this in one of our strategic projects. If you think about building an e-learning module, it's like building code. If you're an IT developer, you have a storyboard, which is a design, you have development, and you have testing before you deploy. It's the same context. And so it's kind of like being a broken record. I found that the team and we need to do that. But I think we're making headway, but it has been a bit of a struggle. And I think there may be one more question. I'm trying to see this one. How do you manage the update of your courses? If you're asking us updates in terms of content on our courses, this is interesting, and I would say this is ongoing. One of the key things that we do is train our new hires, and we have found that keeping up to speed on policies, product changes, and things of that nature is kind of a constant thing. So what we do is we have a team of people that are focused on it. You know, they prioritize the work and they continually make the changes as they can. But, you know, we're trying to figure out where does that end, and I don't know that it really ends. And so we're trying to figure out the best feedback loop with the business. So, and process around that. But today we're making the changes as we hear about them, as we find them ourselves, trying to stay ahead of the game on that one. Yeah, I think that's it, Mason.
All righty. Thank you very much, Marcia and Corinne. Fantastic presentation, loads of great information, and thank you for everybody for participating. Fantastic questions, very brilliant.